Hey everybody, it's Matt from the house, and in this video we're going to talk to you a little bit about the different wake surfers between your surf and your skim, and what really is the difference between these two. Let's check this out. All right, so when you're shopping for wake surfers, you always see, they'll say like a skim style surfer or a surf style surfer. And there definitely is a big difference. And it's not too hard. When you're getting a board, if you're getting your first board, really, you maybe don't want to get the skim style, but again, no matter what you get, that's what you're going to get used to riding and that's what you're going to learn on. But the two boards actually do two very different things. Once you've learned to wake surf and you're kind of getting into it a little bit more and you want to get a board that's a little bit more geared towards your riding style, that's really what it's all about. It's all about the riding style and the things that you want to do behind the boat. So right off the bat, if you look at the two, you've got your skim and surf, and you actually are going to relate this directly to skimboarding and surfing. They're very similar, except for, with skim boards, you've got these small boards, they're very flat, and usually you're running, throwing them down on that thin skim of water as it comes up from the waves. And then you're riding and you're doing shove-its and spinning around, and you're basically keeping the board on the ground. Obviously some of those guys are going out and launching themselves off waves, or even going out and surf on waves too. But for the most part, that board is actually designed to stay on the water. Likewise, when you get into, surfing, and you kind of look at the stuff that they're doing on surfboards, obviously they're out there paddling those big waves, doing hard cutbacks, real fast, aggressive riding, popping off the lip. And this is the exact same thing, and that's what these boards are designed for, is they're designed when you're behind the boat to, give you that little extra speed and give you those really hard carves and be able to pop off the wake, and kind of do aerials. So really what's in the name of the board, if you think back to the original sport, whether it's skimboarding or surfing, that's really what those boards are meant for. All right, now getting into kind of the nitty gritty of it and why and how they're shaped differently and what they do, we look at the skim boards, and if you actually look at the rocker line on this one, you can see it's pretty flat. If I set this thing down on the table here and I push on this end, obviously we've got some rocker there. If I push on this end, there's really nothing. This board is pretty flat in the back, and it's got a little bit of that rocker in the nose, but overall it's got a very low profile line. And this basically, when you bring that nose down, you keep that flatter surface, it basically wants the board to get up on top of the water a little bit more. It's not so much about carving, it's more about just staying up on top of the water. I always attribute this to like a tugboat versus like a cigarette boat. Those tugboats really don't have a lot of, curvature to the hull and the rocker, and they're mainly meant for power and just to kind of plow through the water. Whereas the cigarette boats have that real long nose, that real long hull. They get up on top of the water, and when you see those things cruising across the lake or cruising across the ocean, they're skipping across the water going super fast. And that's kind of a great way to describe this. It's basically designed to get up on top of the water. And you look at the skim boarders, and when they're riding in that skim, it's such a thin layer of water. You obviously need to be up on top of it as much as possible. Same thing here. We're basically trying to stay up on top of the water. We're going to stay in one spot on the wake. And we're usually going to be doing, tricks where we're spinning around, or we're doing shove-its where we're spinning the board around. Also, it's got a little bit more of that twin style shape. It's obviously not a full-on twin tip board, but it does have a very similar shape in the tail that it does on the nose. And that's because on this board, you might spin this thing around and you'd be riding it backwards and using this. And you'll notice that the pad comes up real far too. And basically, that's going to be a board where you're going to want something that's going to perform a little closer when it's riding switch as it does when it's riding regular too. So the shape of the board is pretty important as well. But again, not, if you're just kind of beginning and you're just kind of learning, not a super huge deal. Another thing to look at too is look at the volume of the board. Usually these boards are going to be a little bit thinner boards too, so a little bit sleeker. And then we also look at the fins too. The fins are basically on a skim style board. Usually there's only going to be one center fin on the back. And the fin that it comes with is usually going to be a pretty shallow fin too. It's not going to be a real deep fin. You basically want something that's going to help the board track, but when you need to release it, to pop it or to spin the board around, that board is going to come out of the water real easy. All right, switching over to the surf side of things, we're gonna obviously be looking at a very different board. There are some similarities, but for the most part, it's kind of the opposite of the skim board. We're looking to do real hard carves. We're looking for something that's gonna turn really, really well. We can ride from the top of the wake down to the bottom of the wake and back. So right off the bat, we look at the shape. Obviously, not much of a twin shape to this thing. It has, a little bit of that flatter tail, so you can really pop it off the wake. And not all the boards have that flat tail to them, but usually it's a less symmetrical shape because you're pretty much gonna be riding it one way most of the time. We go and look at those fins too. On a lot of the surfboards, we're gonna be looking at multi-fin setups. And a lot of times the fins are gonna be a little bit more towards the side of the board too. We're looking for fins that are gonna generate power. Also, they're gonna actually be able to carve really, really hard too. So they're gonna move those fins forward and out a little bit farther, so you do get that stability, and you also get that speed and a little bit extra to pop off the wake as well. Let me go back to the volume of the board, and you notice in these ones, and not all the time, but a lot of the surf-specific boards, they do have a lot of volume to them. Something that's going to, be really, really lightweight, really maneuverable, and real, real floaty too. We basically want to have a board that's going to, generate that speed, but we're not really looking to stay on the water as much as we are to stay up on top and really pop off of the wake and everything too. Then we go to the rocker line, and this is another thing where we can see it. We obviously have that same, big rocker in the nose, but we've also got some rocker in the tail too. You notice this board actually rocks back and forth pretty well. So if you think about that rocker, when your board's actually sitting, we got your board, it's sitting in the water, and you turn it a little bit, that rocker line, that's basically how the board's gonna carve. So if you've got more of that rocker, it's gonna wanna put you down a little bit. So you actually have, the board wants to sit lower in the water so it can turn better, but then you've got that volume helping it so it doesn't sink in the water. So it's kind of cool to have the best of both worlds in there, but again, that rocker line is really helping with the board being able to have it carve a little bit better than the skim style board. All right, and then of course, we can do hybrids. So obviously some people like the idea of the skim. Some people love the idea of the surf, but they only want to get one board. They want one board that can do everything. I mean, ideally, a skim board is going to work ultimate for doing skim style surfing. The surf style board is going to be the ultimate for doing surf style. So if you have two different boards, that's obviously going to be the best way to do it. But not everybody is ready to, drop a little extra money on two boards for your boat. And that's where these boards come in, these hybrid boards. So you'll notice that this board, obviously we've got, let me spin it around so it was the same as the other ones. We've actually got in the nose, we've got a lot of that rocker, and we still have a little rocker in the tail. Obviously not as much as the surfboard, but more than the skim board, because the skim had nothing in the tail. It was basically completely flat in the tail. So basically kind of taking those two rocker lines, we kind of pushed them together. Volume on this board too, this one still has a pretty good amount of volume on it, but it's not super thick. And then when we flip it over to the bottom, we still have a lot of the good channeling and stuff, but we look at the fin setup. We actually have a triple fin setup. So the cool thing with this is that you can run these two outer fins and have a very, locked in fast surf style, ride to it. Or we can just run the one fin in the back, and you can put a shorter fin in the back too to have that skim style feel too. So this is kind of going to be, those hybrid boards are going to be the best of both worlds. They're going to have features of both. They're going to work, really well for the skim style rider, and they're going to work really well for the surf style rider. They're just not going to work as unbelievable as the skim and surfboards themselves. All right, well, thanks for checking out our video on skim versus surf, and hopefully this helps you. You're looking to buy a board, helps you, kind of decide exactly what, style of board you want. And if you can't decide, then that's cool. Look for something right in the middle that's got, features of both, kind of those hybrid style boards. We've got a lot of selection of boards at thehouse.com, but this is an easy way to actually narrow it down by a third. You want skim? Boom, 2/3 of the boards are gone. You want surf? Boom, 2/3 of the boards are gone. You want hybrid? There you go. So this can really help narrow down your selection, make it a little less confusing. But if you got any questions about any of the boards, thehouse.com, leave us some comments down below. We're on there every single day trying to answer your questions. And, we want to make sure we can get you into the right board for you and your riding style. Like, subscribe. Definitely make sure to get that bell on too so you can find out when all the new videos drop. And no matter what style of riding, whether you're out skimming and spinning around on the water, or you want to surf and carve and pop off the wake, or you want something in between, get yourself a wake surfer and get out and ride, because any day of riding is a good day of riding.